You are a girl with angelic heritage, and your lover is a werewolf king. But when a dark force threatens your family, you have to make a tough decision. The cast I'm an idiot. There's no other way to describe myself and my actions. Why did I visit him? I'm a masochist. I must be. There's no other explanation. My legs simply moved and my wings flew me back to where my friends were staying and there he was, standing by the window when he should be sleeping. I only meant to check up on everyone one last time before I left for good. I know that they would be okay since Axel has the spells book now, but a perpetual ache was stinging my chest, pulling me towards Jason's room. One thing led to another and we exchanged glances. We looked at each other in the eyes and a void feeling scratched my insides. Guilt. Before I reminded myself what I was supposed to be doing. And left. That was 3 days ago. Right now I'm at a small town named Jerryfell, staying at a local hotel with the perfect view for the police department. After 2 days in the wild searching for information, I came to know that Nero's mate is Samuel Anderson, an Afro-American police officer with a perfect record and loved citizen. So while I'm sitting on a chair in front of my window waiting for Sam to clock out of his job, I'm rethinking my life decisions, more specifically my love life, my currently failing love life. Sometimes I wish things were easier. If I was just a simple, humble human with a normal family and friends and living an honest life. No secrets, no responsibility, no problems. Just live my life with my loved ones without having to watch my back 24/7. What's with the frown, baby angel? I heard a deep voice behind me. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Jason used to call me Angel. I had been a little apprehensive at the beginning but then grew to love the name. Not so much of a baby anymore though. The voice said again. I turned around and faced Uriel, who was standing in the middle of the room, a water bottle in his right hand while its cap rested on the left. His dark skin seemed to glow in the dimly lit room, his pearly white showing in a small contagious smile. Your eel is really nice and easy to get along with. Michael, who was just here a few seconds ago, not so much. Michael is more serious and focused and can sometimes come off as cold and rude for being so straightforward, but he was an incredible archangel. Very responsible, trustworthy and loyal. Despite his cold demeanor, he still was worried about me because of the whole situation when he greeted me on the first night of the mission. He and Nero were close, more than Michael and I, so I know for a fact that he is hurting on the inside too. So when I opened my arms inviting him into a hug, he didn't reject me, and from his tone, I have a feeling that my experience with Uriel won't be much different. Where's Michael? I asked after watching him chug down the whole water bottle down in one go. That's how you greet your cousin? Damn, I feel a little rejected. He avoided my question with a teasing expression. I rolled my eyes at him before getting up and hugging his enormous figure. I barely reached his chest. The thing about archangels is that they are stupidly tall. Like 6'9" or 7 feet tall. He could literally squish me out in a second with his thumb. Shut up, dummy, and answer my question. I muffled into his white shirt. He chuckled in response before pulling away. His shift ended. Mine just started. Raphael is next and then Gabriel. He finally killed my curiosity. I nodded back before returning to my chair that was still facing the window. After a few moments of silence, he finally moved from his spot towards the window, resting a hand in my left shoulder. How are you feeling, Castiel? He asked gently. I kept my eyes on the building in front of me, trying to ignore the stinging behind my orbs. I've had better days, I said with a small voice while shrugging helplessly. I just feel like everything is falling apart. First random attacks started happening. Then Nero betrays us and joins Clarence, forcing me to deal and accept Vertitia Magnus all by myself. I was unconscious for days, Uriel. Now my father sends me down on this crazy mission and forces me to break up with my mate. A mate that doesn't even know who I truly am. What's next? A freaking war. Uriel looks at me with sadness. I'm so sorry, little angel. You don't deserve any of this pain. I shrugged again. I've been doing that a lot recently. It's not your fault, I replied quietly. Well, I don't want to be a pessimist or anything, but you might be right about a war occurring. And you know why? He said back with a grimace. I laughed bitterly while shaking my head. No, not on my watch. I spitted out venomous lie. I could feel his gaze burning the left side of my face, but before he could mutter a single word I stood up and grabbed my coat. Sam just opened the main exit door. Come on. Nero's mate is here. We need to talk with him. I rushed Uriel and then we were both out the door. Since the police building was just next to the hotel, we found him rather quickly, and just in time before he opened the door of his car. I shouted a loud hey, gaining his attention. I have to give it to my brother. Samuel is a fine man. He's rather tall and, most likely due to his job, very well sculpted. His black curly hair sat proudly on top of his head and his hazel eyes were very enticing. Breaking from my thoughts, I rushed closer to him. Hey, are you Samuel Anderson? I asked as if I wasn't one sure that he was in fact the person that I was looking for. Yeah. What can I help you, miss? His deep voice replied back while trying to get a hang of my name. it.丨. I'm it.丨. You must know my brother. Nero. I asked while taking a step closer towards him. He, however, didn't like my answer very much. His eyes widened before he took several steps back. Listen, lady, I've got to go, he said in a rush while trying to find his car keys. His footsteps still moving backwards. What do you know about Nero? I questioned him again. I noticed that he was fumbling with his pockets, hands still searching for the thick metal and plastic piece that would open his vehicle. Getting tired of this little game, I quickly showed him his car keys dingling from my right hand in front of his face. Looking for this? I replied, teasing. He turned around and broke into a sprint while I watched him from afar, very amused. It was just a matter of seconds until Uriel got him. I was walking slowly, step by step, watching as he ran away until he suddenly crashed into an invisible wall, who then revealed to be my cousin Archangel. Sam was laying on the ground, face up, both his arms supporting him up as he stared at Uriel in astonishment. As I arrived at the scene, his head snapped in my direction, following each and every of my movements until I was standing next to Uriel, who looked equally amused. So where were we? I asked while crouching in front of him so we were face to face. And then he passed out. I looked back at him in shock. Well, I wasn't expecting that. You're barking a loud laugh. Look at this. Lately everyone has been passing out on me. It's not even funny anymore. I grumbled and amused. With a powerful aura as yours was just a second ago, I'm not really surprised. Uriel replied, shaking his head with a small smile, clearly finding the situation entertaining. I, on the other hand, was confused by his words. What do you mean by that? And then his face fell. He thought that I was aware of what was happening. His tone became serious as he answered my question. it.丨, you were exuding an incredible dark aura. Not even Lucifer has an aura as strong as yours was just now. 33, Jason, what the fuck are you doing? I asked in shock, my eyes still wide as I took the scene in front of me. Axel jumped at the sound of my voice, making the objects drop to the floor with a loud thud, cackling and spreading for the vast great concrete. To my aged extraordinaire, Madeleine Noben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He turned around before closing the book. You have 3 seconds to start explaining or I'm calling the guards. I threatened him calmly, once again not wanting to gather attention from others. Basil was howling inside me with conflicted emotions. He still hasn't forgotten that the werewolf in front of us was hiding something with our mate. But he also recognized Axel and his wolf as his best friend. His most trusted wolf. I swear I can explain all of this, but you have to promise me to not tell anyone, he replied with a sober and dark expression which made immediately straighten up my posture to show that my wolf was still the alpha whose members could still trust. In response, I nodded back at him with an equally somber complexion. Tom is the new wind element. My little brother is still too young and vulnerable to carry such an heavy duty and responsibility. The attack on the night of your coronation made me realize that. One of the most guarded and safe events was easily attacked by a demon, which made me wonder how of an easy target Tommy is. I talked with Castiel about this since she knows my brother, and she has been helping me dealing with all this craziness. She even lent me a spells book to make me feel safe and also through meditation. That's what you just saw. He finished explaining with a long sigh. I didn't want you to think that I was being paranoid and weak and therefore unfit for my title as your beta. His last words made my heart ache a bit. He was my best friend. He should never feel unworthy of our friendship, no matter how low he was feeling. And I would have comforted him, if it wasn't for the incredibly strong gut feeling that kept telling me that he was lying to me. My alpha instincts were strong enough to know when something wasn't right. And now, as an alpha king, even though my new powers were still fresh, I knew when my people lied to me, and that's exactly what he's spilling. Lies. His emotions feel sincere, and his story made sense. It would explain why he was meeting Castiel behind my back and why they seemed so close. However, there were loopholes. First of all, Axel was always the most reluctant to trust Castiel. He would never run to her with such a sensitive matter. And how did Castiel have such a rare book? He was hiding something to me, something related to my soulmate. I faked a smile at him before pushing against the nearest wall, eyes swirling with anger and frustration. So much secrecy, so many lies and so much danger. I've had enough of this. I have a kingdom now. Millions of lives are depending on me and I don't have time for liars and traitors. No matter how close we were. That was cute. Not gonna lie. You almost got me. But now I want to hear the truth. My teeth were clenching as I put my face closer to his, looking at him in the eyes, daring him to try to pull my leg like that again. The truth now, Axel. He showed his neck in submission, eyes facing the ground as his body obeyed my alpha command. I kept waiting for him to answer me, but all I got in return was pure and utter silence. How is it possible for him to not accept my order? How? I whispered, shocked, looking at him, expecting any sort of reply. Alpha, all I am allowed to say is that you are meant to stay away from this morning star. He finally said, still facing the ground. My heart dropped once again hearing his words. Castiel did this to you? I asked in a hushed tone, not knowing how to react. He kept quiet until I dropped him back to the ground, letting go of him. He fell on his knees and hands, his breathing uneven as he tried to get his airflows back to normal. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Castiel is involved in something beyond us. Something that you could never imagine. What she's doing it for us. Don't lose your faith in her. I can't tell you anything, not because I don't want to, but because I literally can't, Jason. Please trust me. Hearing the desperation in his voice made me crouch down to his level and look him in the eye. I believe you, brother, I said firmly before pulling towards him in a comforting way. I believe you, I whispered in his ear. I could hear his heart beating wildly as he tried to contain his frustration. Our moment, however, was cut short as the rest of the group arrived and I asked curiously. Axel said while staring back at them, with an expression that said, "Don't ask." "Sure," we replied, dragging the word for a few seconds whilst still staring at us weirdly, feeling determined in getting some answers for the many questions that rushed in my head. That Axel couldn't get me. I quickly stood up, making my way towards the exit. All of you go to school. Don't be late. I have some matters to attend. I'll meet all of you later. I stated it in a voice that left no space for objections. I waited for them to get inside their cars before turning around, still feeling Axel's warning gaze burning my back. Wake up. I stared at the redhead that laid still in the small jail as she stirred from her rather uncomfortable-looking slumber. Damn good morning for you too. Melinda groaned while sitting up, holding her head as if suffering from a headache. Seeing my unimpressed expression, she groaned again, now resting against the wall behind bars. I felt that we were friends again now, she said, raising an eyebrow at me. Friends don't lie. Are you willing to be my friend or not? I replied, crossing my arms in front of me, staring her down. It depends on what you have to ask me. Melinda answered while mindlessly playing and twirling around a strand of her dark orange hair. I want the truth. Now she looked back at me, confused and intimidated by my authoritative tone. She stood up straighter, leaving the dirty wall behind her. Why are you so bent over to get cast-il? The petty excuse you keep giving me means nothing. You despise Tiffany. What happens to her doesn't affect you the slightest. That's not true. She blurted out angrily. Too angry, in fact. Something isn't adding up. Tell me the truth and I'll free you. I promised her, taking a step closer to the bars. She was quiet for a while, seeming to be weighing down her options. She was still too unsure of something. I promise that no harm will come to you. Silence. Please. I was desperate for some clarification. She contemplated once again, and my words had apparently affected her as she nodded and looking back at me with certainty. Almost a month ago a man approached me. He was old, on the shorter side, a dark aura around him. He had a really bad vibe attached to him. Elder Clarence. I nodded at her, encouraging her to continue. He started talking about these crazy things. A thing called it.丨. He never really told me what it was. All I know is that he was hell-bent on getting that thing at any costs. However, he couldn't do it alone. He needed more power. He needed a divine power. So that's why you invoked the moon goddess. She nodded while avoiding looking at me. I was surprised to see him when I talked with the elders to request them to start the preparations. He was in the inner circle, he could do it without me. He just needed a motive from a non-suspicious outsider. Me. She took a ragged deep breath as her eyes filled with guilt and turned glossy. I said no at first, you know. A tear rolled down her pale cheek. I refused, but he threatened me. He knows things that no one is supposed to know, Jason. Please believe me when I say that I couldn't say no to him. I tried and... She cut herself up with a sigh, brushing her tears away with the back of her hand. He knows about your mate. I stated, almost certain. The only time I've seen Melinda this vulnerable was the time she mentioned how things went down her mate. I truly felt sorry for her. Things between me and cast-il aren't exactly ideal at the moment, but at least we haven't rejected each other officially. There was still hope for us. The more I know about the things that she's hiding, the clearer I see our future together. How is it going with your mate? She asked out of the blue after a moment of silence and introspection from both parties. The same, unfortunately. To my agent extraordinaire, mythical. Hearts that thanks her unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Melinda nodded, not really knowing what to say. Do you love her? Do I love cast-il? If someone had asked me that question a few weeks ago, I wouldn't hesitate to answer that I was for sure falling for her deeply. But things have changed. I'm the king now. I have responsibilities. I have lives in my hands. Cast-il as my mate was meant to help me to deal with this, not push me away and complicate things more. It also didn't help that she was involved with magic without my knowledge. I don't know intentions. I don't know anything. I can't put my people in risk for someone who's been lying to me since day one. No, I don't. Not yet, at least. I've come to realize that being mates with someone isn't enough to keep a relationship going. I was so excited at the thought of her. Everything about her fascinated me. Even the smallest things. Still do. But to fall in love with someone, you need to actually know your significant other. I don't know anything about cast-il, and what I thought I knew turned up to be lies. Then at the moment I needed her the most, she pushed me away. She hurt me, and you don't hurt the people you love. It doesn't mean that I'm giving up on her. I'm not. To my agent extraordinaire, mythical. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. At the end of the day, she's still the person that I'm destined to be with. But I know that things between us will never be the same. Noticing the lack of reply from Melinda, I looked back at her only to see her staring at me with an emotion that I couldn't decipher. You've changed, she finally said while looking at me with all seriousness. Her eyes were the only gentle thing that stared back at me with care. I guess I have. I shrugged while removing the keys from my pocket and unlocking her cell. The rusty door making a squealing sound as it moved, and she stepped out. Melinda came closer to me, face to face. I could feel her breath on my face. I'm hurting, Jason, she whispered. My heart aches every time I see you. When I look at you, all I see is my own mate. How messed up is that? And before I could react, she pushed her lips against mine. But as soon as they met, she backed out again, flinching. I wanted to know what my mate felt when she kissed your lips, Jason. All I felt was repulse. I was more confused now than ever. I was frozen, not knowing what to do. My mate had sex with you multiple times, feeling repulse only to hurt me. How sad and cruel is that? Why me? She was full on crying now as she rested her head against my right shoulder. Why does Tiffany hate me, Jason? She sobbed. Why? I didn't have an answer to give her. I could only comfort her as I could while trying to process what the fuck I just found out. Help me, please. it.丨Several hours later, Samuel finally opened his dark hazel eyes. He looked confused at first. His vision most likely still blurry due to being out like a light for so long. When he finally saw me and the giant beside me, he seemed to go back to his senses as his eyes widened and his face became slightly paler. Please don't hurt me," he stuttered while moving backwards against the wall of the hotel room. While he was, well, gone, Uriel carried him to my hotel room where we stayed while waiting for Sam to wake up. Uriel and I cashed up a little bit. He told me about his life in heaven and I told him a little bit more about Jason. Midway through our conversation, an incredible spark of pain spread through me. I hunched over my lap, but as soon as I felt it was gone. What the hell was that? I had no idea. Uriel helped me getting back at my own 2 feet and made sure that I was okay, and then we heard Sam shuffling around, meaning that he was about to wake up. "We are here to protect you, Sam. Nero told me about you too," I said, gently trying to soothe his worries away so that he could help us faster. "I'm Castiel, Nero's sister, as I told you before. Now, Sam, we really need your help." I kept going while crouching in front of him, waiting for him to say something. "Is Nero okay?" he finally replied after a few moments of silence. I took a deep breath. "Is Nero okay? Should I tell him the truth or smooth him out?" I looked at Uriel, asking for advice with my eyes, to which he replied with a sigh of his own before nodding his head slightly. "Sam, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know how Nero is doing. All I know is that my brother is working with the enemy and begged me beforehand to protect you. He knew something big was coming, and I'm hoping that you could give us some answers." He looked suspiciously back at Uriel. "I don't judge him. If I passed out and woke up with 2 strangers interrogating me about my lover, I would be suspicious of everyone as well, especially if one of those strangers was almost 7 feet tall. And who might you be?" Sam asked, staring Uriel down. "My name is Uriel. I'm the cousin," Uriel said, rather awkwardly flickering his gaze between me and Samuel. Sam looked relieved. Why was he being so weird and hostile with Uriel? Suddenly realization came down on him. "The Archangel," he blurted. "Yes, that would be me," Uriel replied, still wary of Sam. "Sam, has Nero talked with you recently?" I asked him, breaking him out of his amazement. And his expression fell. His eyes turned sad, a frown taking over his face. He shook his head sideways, signaling, "No. Last time we spoke, he told me that he would be gone for a few days and that I should stay as far away from him as possible. Like brother, like sister, I see." At least Nero had the balls to tell him gently instead of completely. Sam's heart with a rushed breakup. Not that I had much of a choice. That was weeks ago. He looked completely heartbroken and betrayed. "Did he tell you why he was going away?" I asked, giving him a small comforting smile. "Not much. He said that he had to take care of some business regarding Clarence." "Clarence? What do you know about Clarence?" I widened my eyes and looked at him expectantly. Sam, on the other hand, looked terrorized and furious at the same time. His fists were clenched hard as his eyebrows met and he closed his eyes. "Clarence Reyes is a monster. A really thirsty and ambitious one. He was always pestering Nero about his virtue and Ignis, always asking questions and making experiences under the pretense of pure research. Nero eventually got tired of his bullshit and told him to stay away. The very next day, when I was working on a new case at the station, I started feeling an enormous and painful headache. I ran straight to the bathroom and noticed that my eyes were turning pitch black. In panic, I cried out for Nero's help. We later found out that Clarence was trying to have a demon to possess me. He paused and took another deep breath before continuing. A few days later, I was in my car about to make my way home when suddenly someone jumped from my backseat and forced a rag on my face with chloroform, making me black out only to wake up chained and bruised. Clarence tortured me for hours before Nero found us and agreed to help him with whatever he wanted regarding to Verity and Ignis. In exchange, I would be safe. No one was allowed to hurt me or my family. He was cut midway by a loud banging noise. I jumped at the sound before looking to my right, towards the source of it, and much to my surprise, there was a hole in the wall. I looked at Uriel as he regained his breath, his fist still closed from the punch that he had just delivered. He was furious. "Are you okay?" I asked, concerned at my cousin. He only nodded back, his breathing still incredibly fast. I looked back at Sam, urging him to continue, but his eyes were still glued to Uriel's form. Sam. "Yeah. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel. Thoughts out thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." He snapped back to me. "I'm okay after that." Clarence kept experimenting on Nero, each time worse than the other. He was trying to remove Verity and Ignis from Nero, almost killing him in the process many times. However, this time he went too far. Nero wasn't even able to walk, sleep, or eat. He went completely blank, as if each and every nerve ending of his went void. His power still resigned inside him, but it wasn't the same. Verity and Ignis wasn't inside him anymore. He could barely talk. The only word he kept whispering was Allegra, the leader of the Witches' Coven. I stated with a nod, my heart aching for everything that my brother went through. I found her and asked her for help. As soon as she saw Nero, she went full on panic mode. Every single witch of her coven was rushed to the chanting chamber. It was massive. More than 500 witches from all ages were reunited and kept chanting and merging powers. All I remember was seeing a giant bright light and everything turned white. When Nero woke up a week later, he was fully human and his part of the Verity in Ignis was transferred to later. Allegra said that it was the only way to save Nero. She said that he might regain some of his old powers as time went by, but that for now he was too weak and fragile. He truly was fully human. I'm not sure if he has any of his abilities back yet. I was in shock. I didn't know how to react. All I could feel at that moment was the wetness of the tears that kept falling of my eyes and my heart beating wildly. A warm, comforting hand came to rest on my shoulder. Uriel started to stroke my head as he kept muttering, "I'm so sorry, little angel. Or Nero is strong, he's okay." But how? How do I know that my brother is not in some sort of pain as we speak? Clarence might be torturing him and we can't do anything about it. We need to tell my parents. We need to go back home now, I said while standing up after recomposing myself. "Sam, we will come with you to pack your stuff. We need to leave as soon as possible," I continued while wiping my slightly red nose one more time. He didn't resist my request and agreed silently. We hurried everything from the hotel, paid for my stay, and followed Samuel's instructions to his house. You followed Sam inside his home while I stayed outside in the car, to make sure no one else came. While they were packing Sam's stuff, I decided to check my phone and perhaps call Axel to tell him that I will be coming home sooner than expected. As soon as I unlocked my phone, I was bombarded with notifications, 12 unread messages and 7 missed calls from Axel. I furrowed my eyebrows and glanced at the preview of the text Jason knows. "Cast it's urgent, please. Call me ASAP." He saw me. I didn't dare to open or read the preview of the rest of them. I quickly dialed Axel's number and the ring only sounded once. "Cast are you there?" he shouted from the other side in panic. "Yeah, I'm here." "Jason saw what? What's happening?" I asked, feeling my anxiety levels rising as my heart kept beating faster and faster. "Forget about that. It's not important. You need to come back now," he said in a rushed and desperate tone. "What? Why, what the hell is happening, Axel?" "Jason is claiming Melinda as his Luna tomorrow." My world stopped. I dropped my phone to the ground as my heart clenched and twisted in pain. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. My mouth felt like sand and dry as it was open, still processing what was going on. So this is what rejection feels like. I felt numb, as if something was ripped out of me. My pride. My love. "Cast-il, are you still there?" Axel's muffled voice sounded from the cracked phone that laid in the middle of the pathwalk. But I couldn't answer. I couldn't feel. I felt empty. The only thought running my head as pain consumed me from the inside was "Karma is a bitch." 35 Jason, are you out of your mind or have you lost your head? Axel yelled at me, his face red with anger and his eyes wide as if he couldn't believe what was happening. "I vote both," Ethan said, raising his hand, a spoonful of ice cream hanging from his mouth. "It's the most sensible thing to do. I have a kingdom to take care of." I replied curtly, "Yeah, and you also have a mate that cares for you. How can you do this to Cast-il?" Isabella screamed while hitting her hand on the kitchen aisle, a loud noise resonating through the kitchen. William quickly pulled her in his arms, trying to calm her down, his actions making my blood boil with jealousy. Why can't I hold my mate in my arms? And everything came back in flashes in my head, a now familiar aching in my chest returning. She does not care for me. I don't want to hear any of you mentioning her name again. But yeah, it's an order. I raised my voice, silencing all of them. A moment of silence followed, their heads hanging low while staring at the ground. That was until Elijah interrupted it. "But why Melinda? Didn't she rape you?" He asked, almost afraid of saying the words. "We talked about it. She didn't do it. She just made me believe so. Yes, she drugged me, and yes, she fooled me, but she explained her reasons, which are, may I add, none of your business. Give her a try, she's actually a really nice girl. A great warrior as well. She fits perfectly the role as my Luna," I clarified with a soft, forced smile. "Are you even listening to yourself right now? She played you like a toy and even used drugs on you." "Drugs? How the hell is a girl like that fit to be queen?" Isabella kept going while we held her back. "It's all in the past. You can't hold grudges forever. Everyone makes mistakes. Besides, I know her motives." I insisted. "I'm sorry, bro, but this isn't you talking. Are you on something? Did she give you any magical white powder or—" "I'm perfectly fine, William. Thank you for your concern, you are a great friend. Now excuse me, but I have to meet up with my soon-to-be Luna," I said while patting Will's shoulder while passing by them to get to the door that exited the kitchen. "What do your parents think about all of this?" "They like Cast-il a lot. Hell, even Madison loves her." "Everyone does." Isabella asked, one last snapped. I picked a chair from under the table and smashed it right next to where they were sitting. "I ordered you to not talk about her." Basil had taken over me, my eyes changing their color to a darker shade, a loud growl following my voice. I was shaking with anger and it took me a while to get hold of myself. All of them stood up and took a defensive stance, expecting my next move. Their faces blank, but their eyes showed sadness, disappointment and rage. I scoffed at them before forcing a smirk and leaving the kitchen, but not missing what Axel whispered when I put my handle off the door. "You are making a huge mistake," which I shrugged off while making my way upstairs to my private office. After my coronation, a lot of responsibilities came, and so did paperwork. My father had already a room ready for me to take over as my own office, and at the time I didn't give it much importance. Now I thank him more and more for granting me with this space that organizes my life in more ways than I could count. Twisting the golden handle until I opened the door and looked at Melinda, who was sitting on the couch while nibbling on her fingernails, her red hair all over the place. As soon as she heard me coming in, she stood up and walked towards me. "Did they buy it?" she asked anxiously, her eyes flickering between my face and the door behind me. I quickly closed it and nodded back at her while taking a deep breath. "They most likely hate me right now." "I went a little overboard with the asshole act," I said, trying to form a small smile. "But I was too worn out to do it. Who knew that lying to your friends could be this hard? I'm so sorry for putting you through this. This is a terrible idea. You don't deserve to deal with my shit. Fuck, we just made amends and I'm already high. Hey, calm down, okay? It's not your fault. It was my idea and you don't deserve the shit that Tiffany is putting you through either," I said, trying to calm her down, holding her face in between my hands, looking at her in her eyes. Come here, I said while pulling her in my arms into a hug. I've missed you. You know, she mumbled against my chest, while I felt her tears soaking my shirt. I've missed you, Mel, I said, patting her head gently. She quickly pulled away, wiping her tears and straightening herself up again, shifting to business mode. The goddess is bound to come in 12 days, which means we have 12 days to come up with a solid plan to have Tiffany to stop her from hurting Cast-IL and to stop Elder Clarence from doing whatever the hell he's up to. She said. I nodded back. We will announce you as my Luna today at school, right in front of Tiffany. Hurt her from the inside. She will for sure come to you, and then we strike. I continued. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nolban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing Kishut's enthusiasm. What if Cast-IL comes meanwhile? You'll be hurting her as well, Mel said, concerned. It's a small price to pay for her protection. No harms are to come to my mate, I replied in a sober tone. Mel sighed and rubbed her eyes tiredly before turning to me with a serious expression. Jason, you are hurt. I know that. You know that. She knows that. But this isn't how you are supposed to take care of things. Not hurting her back like this. You are better than this. Come on. I avoided her eyes before replying. You are reading too much into this. The school is the perfect place. Lots of young pack members who won't dare to speak up about it. And it'll catch Tiffany off guard. She thinks that she's the queen of that whole place, so being exposed to us like this will enrage her even more. I clarified, trying to make it sound as logical as possible. She shook her head. You're making a huge mistake, she mumbled while sitting down on the couch once again. Her legs spread out as she leaned back looking at the ceiling. I sat down next to her, mimicking her pose before replying. So I've been told. 36. Cast-IL. Sam, Uriel and I left immediately. None of them asked anything. Just kept quiet and followed my orders, which made the trip back home rather silent and awkward. The tension was palpable inside the car. Both of them had questions but knew that it was for the best if they didn't ask them. And I was thankful for it. During the car ride I had a wave of emotions and decisions parading in my head before making me think what my next move should be. Should I go to his house? And what? Cry and hope for him to take me back. I decided then to text Aroma's Edie to help me. We agreed that it was best if I went home first. Took a shower and accommodated Samuel in his new temporary house. Having Sam as my responsibility has actually become a great distraction. Enthusiasm, and doesn't deserve to be involved in any more problems or drama, and that had me motivated to not make any rash decisions no matter how much I wanted to burn both Melinda and Jason alive. Pulling into my driveway I turned down the radio that was currently playing Death in My Pocket by Machine Gun Kelly. A song that I'm sure that fate was playing to provoke me even more with the relatable lyrics in my situation. I mean, I've never heard it playing on the radio before, so why now? I snapped out of my thoughts and got out alongside with my bag. Hearing two loud thuds in response, I knew that both Uriel and Sam had exited as well. Inserting the key and opening the door, I let them enter before me, closing the door behind me softly. This is it. Welcome to my house, I said softly, smiling at them weakly. Come on, follow me. I'll get someone to help you with your stuff. I continued before walking further into the mansion. After showing each of them their rooms, I excused myself to take a shower and texted Arama Azidi to come over. I undressed and stood in front of mirror in the bathroom, simply staring and letting my mind fly to wherever it wanted so that I could wash the thoughts away with the warm water. I looked the same as the last time that I looked at myself, except for the obvious red eyes from crying. Taking a deep breath, I furrowed my eyebrows and reminded myself who I was. I'm Cast-IL Morningstar, daughter of Lucifer and Charmine Morningstar, daughter of the Devil and God's sister, holder of Virta T.M. Ignis, and the angel on fire. My eyes starting burning with a glowing orange color as a goosebump spread all over my body. I refused to shed any more tears over a boy. I'm more worthy than this. We will talk as adults and come to an agreement, no matter how painful the outcome can be. I stepped into the shower and washed my exhaustion away. Once I was dried and dressed, I decided to head downstairs to address the commotion that was unraveling there. Maria stood in all of her short height with a wooden spoon while scolding Uriel, who stood tall as ever, rubbing his hand in pain while Sam was laughing away, and Aramis Didi just stood there as confused. "Castiel, my sweet angel. You're back, and brought this brute that you call a cousin with you," she said, rushing to give me a hug while glaring at Uriel, who was trying to control his amusement towards the tiny woman. Their height difference was comical. Maria was terribly short and Uriel terrifyingly huge, hence why she only managed to hit his hand with the spoon, I presumed. "What's going in here?" I asked with a genuine smile. "I missed this. I was greeting all of our guests as a good head maid that I am, when this tall brick with wings decided to pick me up, and as if I was a child. You brute, I held you when you were a child." She started spitting out with incredulity and embarrassment lacing her voice. Uriel took a step back, holding both his hands in the air. "I was trying to hug you. You're just so small and I dare you to finish that sentence, boy. I dare you." Maria cut him off while raising her wooden spoon towards Uriel, whose eyes wide and comically, never removing his gaze from the spoon in her hand, his face draining of color. The whole situation kept going with a round of laughs in between, until Aramis Ed motioned me to go upstairs so that we could talk in private, leaving the rest with their bickering behind. Once settled in my room, he looked at me with pity. "You heard the news, huh?" To which he nodded. "Yeah. When Axel couldn't enter in contact with you, he freaked out and called me," he explained. "So what am I supposed to do now? What if he announces during school?" I asked him while massaging my temples. "Now, you go to school and hang out with your friends. The worst part of your mission is done, and you should celebrate that first. When they announce the situation, if they announce the situation, which I'm finding incredibly sketchy to be true, you stand tall and proud. Remember who the fuck you are, Castiel. You don't need some arrogant little boy making assumptions and playing with your feelings like this," he said, getting agitated by each passing moment. "But it was my fault. I pushed him away. I started this. Not him, me. I made him believe that everything we had was nothing more than a game, that I had played with his feelings the whole time." I replied, getting hot all over. "And it wasn't. You are trying to tell me that this whole mate charade wasn't a game. You needed a distraction, and so did he. Never once did both of you sat down and talked and got to know each other. Do you even know his middle name? You went from exchanging glances at each other to meeting family with no steps in between nor whatsoever. You were both going too fast. You didn't like him. You liked the idea of him because he was your mate. And so did he with you. All because of a fucking bond that for some unknown reason or formed. And don't try to justify his actions, Castiel. No matter how hurt you are, you should never cheat on your mate or betray them like he's doing." I stood in silence, absorbing his words and concluding that he was absolutely right. We were going too fast. But it's not too late, you know. You can still get to know him and learn about his mistakes. Trust me, there are many of them. And have your happy ending with your mate. However, don't you ever put yourself down because of him or any other person, got that? He pulled me into a hug and patted my head softly. "What do you mean? He has committed many mistakes," I murmured into his dark shirt. "Not my story to tell. He needs to own up to his mistakes and be true with himself while telling you personally. Now get your bag because we are going to school in 5. I called your parents. They are on their way here to talk with Samuel. I'm coming with you to school. Lucifer's orders. You will stay here until Ebriel or yours parents arrive," he explained while getting up. I grabbed my school bag, took a deep breath and headed downstairs once again. The drive to school almost felt nostalgic, a bit dramatic. It's only been like what? A week? To perhaps. Aramis quickly snapped me out of my thoughts by slamming his car door shut, waiting for me to follow him. We entered in the building standing next to each other, heads raised high, faces not giving anything away, while passing by many groups of people that stood in front of their lockers and wouldn't stop whispering or looking at us. Most girls checking Aramis out. I don't blame them. Aramis is incredibly beautiful and exudes a powerful aura, his dark features making him look mysterious and dangerous. Brown hair with dark eyes with a light hint of red. It was so subtle that you would only notice if you got really close to his face. High cheekbones and a 5 o'clock shadow. He looked more mature than the rest of the male students here, adding another motive for him to be the center of attention. We finally arrived to my locker and my heart ached noticing that there wasn't anyone from our group there waiting for me as they would usually do. That made me appreciate Irma's presence a lot more. I retrieved my books as usual and headed to class. I missed the first 3 classes, so I would be attending this one, and then it was lunch break. I wonder if they have announced it yet. I was suddenly pulled into a hug, breaking me out of my sad thoughts. Castiel, I have missed you so much, Isabella exclaimed while squeezing the living lights out of me. I smiled at her, hugging her back. I missed you too. All of you, I said with a soft smile, looking at the boys that were standing in front of me. Group hug. Ethan yelled and pulled all of us into his bone-crushing embrace. You idiot, I can't breathe. Elijah squealed. Good, Ethan replied sadistically. William eventually broke them up and we all took a deep breath, appreciating the air in our lungs. Irma's just stood there bored. I wasn't the only one to notice this, seeing that everyone suddenly tensed at his presence. Well, everyone except for Ethan, of course. You look grumpy. Do you want a hug too? Ethan asked, opening his arms and started walking towards Irma's but Bella quickly smacked him in the back of the head and stopped him. I didn't know you were bringing Irma's along. Axel said father's orders. I replied and watched Axel's eyes shine with understanding. Right. Come on, we will be late to class, he said, motioning ahead, ignoring the burning glares of confusion that Bella, Will, Elijah and eventually Ethan sent him. None of them actually daring to ask anything. Axel was, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Their soon-to-be beta class went by rather quickly. I didn't pay much attention to what the teacher was saying. My mind was elsewhere, wondering and cogitating about what was yet to come. My gut was telling me that this lunch break wouldn't be ordinary. Eventually the bell rang and my stomach was churning with anticipation. I moved closer to Axel and whispered to him, "Is it now?" To which he replied with a pitiful "I'm not sure." We kept walking through the large corridors as a group, heading straight to the cafeteria. My eyes wandering everywhere looking for any signs of Jason or Melinda. Isabella and William were chatting away as usual and opened the cafeteria's doors and held them waiting for us to enter and then proceeded to close the doors again. I slowed down my steps, not sure to which table they were heading. I didn't even know if Jason and them were on speaking terms. Eventually I realized that we were heading towards their usual table, making me take a relieved breath. Maybe things aren't as bad as I imagined. You see, our table had 7 chairs in total. It would usually be Isabella, William, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Jason and I. And as we sat down, the most uncomfortable feeling grew in the pit of my stomach. I looked at the seat beside me, where Jason would usually sit, and noticed Irma's sitting down in that spot as a replacement. Jason would never approve of this. He was always wary when it came to Irma's Hell, every time was because of Irma's BD, so having him sit in Jason's seat replacing him felt like a betrayal. Perhaps I'm being too paranoid about the whole situation, but my body wouldn't stop sending me signals that something wasn't right. All of a sudden, everyone except for me, Irma's and very few students clasped their heads and held them almost as if in pain. I stood confused and nervous, feeling my eyes swirling and switching when suddenly the cafeteria's door opened with a loud slam against the wall and everything started making sense to me. The mind, link in the pack. There they stood together holding hands and looking around tall and proud with smiles in their faces. Axel then started gripping his hair, almost in pain, and the rest of the group followed. Of course they weren't going to announce it out loud. The human students in the school would start asking questions about what a Luna is and would find it more suspicious than everyone clasping their heads due to the loud bang from the door. They wouldn't even notice or remember that they clasped their heads a second earlier than the door had slammed. Mind, blinking isn't supposed to be painful. Why are all of them acting like this? it.丨said, looking back forth to the people around us and towards the door. I was as confused as he was and turned my attention back to Jason and Melinda. However, I wasn't ready for the sight in front of me. They both stood in each other's arms. He was caressing the side of her face, brushing a few stray hairs away, and leaning in closer and closer, their lips almost touching. I couldn't watch. I refused. I turned back to my friends, worried by their pained expressions, when suddenly my chest started to feel heavy, my pulse slowing down, and a burning hot pain started consuming me from the insides. I gasped in pain and crashed against it.丨, feeling weak and dizzy, my body shaking and trembling while breaking into a sweat. it.丨. it.丨, suddenly yelled while trying to hold me up straight. But I couldn't. My body felt like it was being drained, a constant pounding in my head and a heart-clenching feeling. Axel managed to get through his pain and look back towards us and mutter some words. He's blocking us. Alpha command. He ended with a soft whimper. I could feel it.丨's body shaking with anger, his movements making me even more dizzy, triggering my body to start bleeding through my nose. My eyes glowing with a bright orange color and my back arching, a burning sensation forming in my forehead as if I was being branded with a symbol. The it.丨, whispered, his face paling in panic and fear. For the first in my whole life I saw it.丨scared. His horror-stricken gaze never leaving me. My forehead. My body kept twisting and curling in pain. I could feel my consciousness slowly slipping away. I turned to the cafeteria door once again and noticed that only Melinda stood there. Her gaze was painted with horror, pity and guilt. So much guilt. I'm sorry, she had mouthed. And then I closed my eyes. 37. Jason, I hate it.丨. I really do. My motives are many, but at the end of the day it all comes down to two things. The day that my mom fell ill and the power that he holds. I've seen him pulling up a few cards and tricks out of his sleeve. But in this precise moment, I couldn't help but agree with him for once. You are a fool, Jason Silver. And fucking hell, he couldn't have been more right. Once again, I put my loved ones in danger due to my selfish and juvenile attitudes. Werewolves and vampires have always had a certain despise for each other. Even though we didn't really show it. It was there. I had just turned 16 at the time. My sister Madison was 4. The Camkins barged in the castle, throwing insults and threats while making accusations regarding our involvement on the disappearance of Roderick. I didn't know who Roderick was at the time, but I now know that the missing entity was none other than the god responsible for vampires. The outbreak was quickly controlled through a deep and peaceful conversation between both parties, so we simply shrugged it off and moved on with our lives. We had hoped that logic would have made its way through those thick, half-dead skulls. How could we werewolves, earthly beings, have enough strength to overpower a god? However, that wasn't the case. Not even 7 months later the Camkins striked again, this time taking my mom and Madison as hostages. It had been a total of 8 hours that the vampires had them in their domain. 8 hours of pure agony. They didn't harm Madison, but I can't say the same thing about my mother. She had been bitten and had 3 hours to get the cure that would expel the toxins out of her body. More than 5 hours of tracking and following leads to try to find both females. And 3 hours of my father, King Tobias, trying to contact me through mind, link, cell phone and every other possible mean of communication, only to come back always empty-handed. Because I was way too busy doing this girl from a different pack that was visiting the capital. I had turned off my mind, Link not wanting to be disturbed during my hormonal rampage. My family needed me, and I turned my back to them because of my own needs. If my mind had been open, I could have gone faster to meet my father and act as the much-needed backup team at the time, and my mom would have gotten the cure in time instead of being driven to this almost craze now. A bloody fight went down that day. Many were injured, but everyone knows that if I had been there on time, things would have turned out completely different. And now, years later, Madison still hasn't been able to forgive me for my negligence. I try to redeem myself every day for my actions. I've accepted my mistakes and unacceptable behavior and grovel for a piece of mercy from my sister, who is 6 years old now. Not even old enough to know how to read fluently, but mature enough to learn how to control her demons and overwhelming experiences due to the mental scars that marked her that day and still haunt her as we speak. She isn't easy to deal with, and she has the deepest trust issues that I've ever seen. And all because of me. She doesn't make friendships easily, and certain actions and words can trigger her to start crying, making all of us very protective of her. Me being the most due to the guilt that eats me inside every single day. And now this story repeats itself. The plot is just different. Melinda was right. I was hurt and I wanted something. Someone to feel my pain to. Hurt people, and that's exactly what I did. However, this short feeling of revenge didn't last long, as it completely backfired as soon as I looked at my mate bleeding and convulsing in my enemy's arms, surrounded my friend, who I had pushed away so that I could go through this stupid plan. I didn't think. I just ran. I ran towards Castiel, ignoring my pack members that were still in pain due to my first alpha command, and ripped her off her armor's arms. I picked her up all too easily, taking a short glimpse at the vampire's face to see his reaction towards me as I took my mate, his friend, who I've hurt before and was hurting now, out of his embrace. I was shocked, to say at least. Arama's Edie was pale and sweating profusely as he stared in horror at the passed-out girl in my arms. I had never seen a Camkin looking like this. At any other time I would have made fun of him and feed my ego with his expression. However, the shivering sensation that rushed through me as my skin warmed Castiel's had me staring back at my mate, covered in blood from non-existent visible wounds. The blood just kept flowing and staining the floor. But that wasn't what freaked me out the most. The symbols forming on her forehead were moon phases. White moon-shaped marks started glowing in the middle of her forehead as the temperature in the room grew hotter by the minute, and blood-curdling screams started resonating through the whole building as the floor started shaking, the walls cracking with dust flying all over. I didn't blink. I didn't think. This was a sign of the gods above. This was the moon goddess's doing. A warning due to my attitudes towards the blessed and precious gift that she had given me. My mate. I just ran outside with Castiel in my arms and slid down against a locker wall, still holding on to her. I pushed her hair to the side and sank my teeth deep into the side of her neck, where her shoulder and neck met. Tears blurred my vision as I retracted my fangs from her flesh. I had dreamed of marking her many times, but never like this. Not out of need and desperation or in the brink of death. I could taste her blood in my mouth as I stroked her cheek lovingly. I whispered, holding her head with my hands as I pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. "I'm so sorry." I kept whispering over and over, with her still unresponsive and unconscious body pressed against mine. I pressed my nose against the top of her head, tears rolling down without a pang of shame as I placed more kisses on her head, getting lost in her fading scent and silky hair. "Now, Kate with blood, open your eyes, Castiel, please." I didn't care that half of the school was falling to pieces. The screaming and the chaos that surrounded us had become background music, a terrifying and unsettling symphony, but not my priority nonetheless. All that it mattered in that moment was the corpse of my mate that was growing weaker and weaker by each passing second as I felt her sinking deeper against me. I held onto her tighter and heard her heart beating slower and slower. "Please don't leave me. Castiel, please, you promised. Baby, please don't." Her bleeding suddenly stopped. Golden crusts took the place of the red metallic fluid in which I was covered into by now. I didn't care nor question the why had her blood turned to gold. All I saw was an opening, a silver lining. She would wake up. She had to wake up. The moon shapes disappeared, making me inch my breath as relief and anxiety both filled me in. My stomach churned with anticipation to see what her body would do next. Her mark was already healed and I didn't know how to feel about it. It's supposed to take days to heal. She did it in a matter of seconds. But I didn't storm over it long. I just kept watching her, mesmerized by every little detail that I never had the opportunity to see this close. I knew that whatever the hell she was hiding wouldn't matter. I just wanted her. All of her. I want to cherish her scars, her secrets, her heart, her body, just her. My heart halted in realization. I'm falling deeply in love with Castiel. My heart stopped, but also did hers. Sometimes you don't know what you love until it's gone.